Okay, there you go. So this table comes from chapter 22 that we continue analyzing today. I'll explain in a moment what this table is all about. It is there to help us understand a couple of important principles, a couple of important concepts that we're going to cover today. One of them is that the principle that determines the equilibrium level of production of any given firm or any given team that produces anything together is marginal productivity. Principle of marginal productivity. The second point, that second concept that we will learn by doing, in a sense here, is that wages are determined by opportunity cost of labor. And this has profound implications for economic theory and economic policy as well. A different way of saying the same thing is actually that the supply and demand of labor determine the price of labor. And I'll explain why these two statements are essentially equivalent. Price of labor is determined by supply and demand for a given type of labor, and wages are determined by opportunity cost. So this example will help us understand why these two concepts are.
What did you say about supply and demand?
Supply and demand of a given type of labor determine the price of labor. The price of labor is a wage. That's the same. Supply and demand on the labor market determine wages. Number three, private firm is more efficient than a self-governing socialist firm. Private firm is an efficient form of economic organization. We'll see, we'll learn by looking at this example right there. So, okay. There are a couple of other side points, but these three are the main. Now, let me first introduce the example and explain what is it all about. The example is a hypothetical country, a hypothetical island somewhere in the middle of Atlantic called Codlandia in your book. It means that the only economic activity that they do, the only industry that they have is catching fish, catching cod. That's Codlandia. And this country has 1,000 workers, and for the sake of simplicity, we're going to assume that all of them are equally productive, and that all of them do only one thing: catch fish. And here you can see in this social total figure, you can see here what is the economic productivity of this society. 1,000 people times 8 units of fish per day or per week, it doesn't matter, for some arbitrarily chosen period of time, which means 8,000. 8,000 cod equals 1,000 people times 8 cod. That's kind of production function. That's what they can do by fishing on the shore, using whatever kind of fishing implements they have, nets or hooks and lines, whatever. Let us just assume that they have a certain production technology for fishing, and that they can catch 8,000 cod, let's say, per week. Now, we want to analyze what happens when you enter a new factor of production, something that didn't exist before. And that would be a boat. Imagine somebody comes along from the outside and brings along a boat that could be used to catch fish offshore. And now this table gives you the information, what can happen, what can change in this little community if you start catching, if you divert at least some of these 1,000 people from catching fish on shore to doing it by boat, on a boat. We are not assuming for now any kind of ownership structure, whose boat it is, how many people, and so on, any kind of relation. We just assume that if a boat is going to be used to catch fish, they will need to work together as a team. And now, if you have nobody on the boat, 8,000 is the total catch or total quantity of fish that they can catch. If you add the first person here on the boat, let's say I'm the owner of the boat and I hire one person to run the boat and to fish by using it, that person can produce 12 units of cod, whatever, 12 pounds. But assumes a realistic weight, 12 pounds of fish. So this is the total product on the boat with one person manning the boat. Marginal product, what is the marginal product? It's a concept of marginal productivity. Anyone remembers? Did we talk about it last time? Definition of marginal product, that's an increase in total productivity, total product. You can say revenue if we had money. This economy is understood not to have money, so we cannot talk about revenue. We can talk about total physical productivity, physical product, 12 pounds of fish. So marginal productivity would be, I'll give you a definition, and then there is one catchword that you might not understand. I'll explain it right away. I'll give you the definition first. Marginal productivity is an increase in total product achieved by adding one more unit of a variable factor production. Marginal productivity is an increase in total product by one more unit of a variable factor. Keyword here is variable, as opposed to constant. So remember these two notions, these two concepts. So what is a variable factor here? What is a factor of production? First, let us define the generic concept first. What is a factor of production? Just basic definition.
Something that's needed to produce.
Yeah, anything that you need in order to produce a consumer good or whatever good you're selling. A firm is selling on the market, remember the definition last time. So whatever you need to produce something that you sell is a factor of production. If you're a farmer, land is a factor of production, fertilizer, laborers that you hire, tractors, combine harvesters, all of these are factors of production. In the analysis of the production process, we very often divide the factors into two categories for the purposes of analysis. I cannot explain you fully why we do that right now. I'll explain it maybe in a week and a half or 2 weeks. But just for now, take it for granted that we have two different types of factors for the purposes of analysis. One of them is constant. What is a constant factor of production? That's a factor of production, the quantity of which doesn't change as the volume of output increases. As the quantity of production increases, this factor doesn't change. So let's say you're a farmer and you have a piece of land and you want to increase your crop yield, but you do it by adding more fertilizer or maybe hiring more workers. Anything that you do to increase your productivity, but you still use the same acreage. So the land is then your fixed or constant factor. That's fixed or constant factor. Variable factor is a factor, the quantity of which changes with the changes in the volume of production or output. So what is a fixed factor here? Or a constant factor, or what is a variable factor? In our example of a boat.
The boat's constant.
The boat is constant. You have one boat, and if we don't assume that there will be another one, that's a constant factor. So the only way for us to increase the catch of cod, fish, is to vary the labor factor, to add more people to the crew. Okay, so that's what's going on here. Boat is a constant factor, labor is a variable factor. Total product, by adding the first unit of a variable factor, is 12 units. Now we're going to learn something more about marginal productivity here. You add the second unit, or you hire the second person. What is your total product?
Difference in the...
Your total product is now 30. What is your marginal product? So remember definition, go back 3 minutes ago. Definition of marginal productivity. An increase in total product is a consequence of adding one more unit of a variable factor. So what is your marginal product? By adding the second one. 18. Isn't that strange, actually, that your increase in productivity is not proportionate, it's not geometric. You are the first worker, you get 12 additional units. So in a common, intuitively, you would have expected when you add a second unit that you increase it by additional 12 units. No, here it's 18 units. So you can say that the marginal productivity at the beginning of the operation typically increases. Why is that? What do you think? So marginal productivity first increases. Do you have any ideas about why is that the case?
Because if there's just one person, he has to steer the boat and get all his fishing lures ready and string the rod himself and do everything.
Yeah. You have two persons. They can so one thing, they can divide up tasks. They can do more. So division of labor, or I can say specializations, gains from specialization. So not only that they can divide up tasks and do more, but then their intensification that comes along with this is important. A person that specializes in one or two tasks can perform them much, much, much better than if she or he does everything. So, you know, this example that I oftentimes like to use to illustrate the gains of specialization come from the first modern economic treatise, The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith in 1776. You might have heard about it, a parable of the needle factory parable. That he visited the needle factory and he noticed something a very small craftsman shop, like 6 or 7 people working together. Typically young, low-skilled people, very low wages. And he realized, and the way how they would operate is that they would divide up the tasks into 4 or 5 different subtasks. And what he discovered actually that these same 7 or 8 young men could produce maybe 100 times more needles per day if they specialize than if every one of them tries to make a needle from the beginning to the end. You see, the same people, the same quantity of labor hours, the same quantity of raw materials, just by specializing, you can increase production dramatically. So more people you add up to the team, gains of specialization greater. So that's the reason why marginal productivity curve starts increasing first. You have increasing returns. So you return to the first unit is 12, you return to the second unit is 18. Now what happens here very quickly when you add the third unit? Your total product on the both is 46. Which means that your marginal product from adding the third unit is now 16. Diminishing returns. So that's called the logic of diminishing returns. So marginal productivity curve first increases, and then after a while it starts diminishing. There's a concept of diminishing returns. Remember that, very important concept. Which means that your increment in revenue or increment in total product, if you are operating without money, will start going down as you add more and more units of a variable factor after a certain point. Do you have any explanation for that? Why would this be the case? If specialization increases productivity, as you add more people, more and more people to the team, why would the firm stop increasing at any point? Sky's the limit, and we can create infinite productivity by creating a firm of infinite number of people. Million people, the firm consisting of million people would be more productive than the one with 1,000 people. Maria?
I mean, the one thing I'm thinking of is like the too many cooks in the kitchen. Like at a certain point, like you just can't function well together. That might be like a need to introduce another variable of like how you offer, how you organize yourself.
Yeah.
But just having more bodies doesn't mean it's going to be better.
So imagine, so this example, imagine that like 4 of us work on a plot of land of the size of this room, like a garden. So we can sort of divide up the tasks and know who is responsible for what. Imagine the entire room, the entire class. Every one of us needs to work on a small plot of land and to divide up tasks. So first, the problem of coordination, who is doing what, we're stepping on each other's toes. The second problem, management costs, controlling that everybody is doing their best. So it's relatively easy for 4 of us to monitor each other. It's not completely costless, but it's way easier than if somebody is in charge of controlling that every one of 22 or 23 people is doing exactly what they need to do. So the management costs, coordination costs increase as the size of the operation, as the size of the firm, as the size of the team increases. So that works against the specialization gains. So after a while, those costs of management and coordination overwhelm the diminishing, create the diminishing returns because they increase more than the benefits of specialization. That's the reason why you don't see the firms of infinite size. That's the reason why you have to stop growing your team after a certain point. So diminishing returns are caused by the increase in coordination and management costs. So that's the explanation for the numbers that we see here, that it starts going down. So here it starts going down rather soon. So the fourth unit, fourth worker, your total catches 58, marginal product goes down. As the marginal product goes down, But when you add the 8 worker, what happens then? So you're adding new and new worker and you're getting less and less of additional value. But after a while, you add another worker, you lose value. You're worse off in absolute terms than you would have been without this worker. You're gonna produce less. From 72, you go to 64 if you employ one additional person. So this discoordination and chaos created by too many people manning a single vote will reduce productivity, total productivity. Okay, so that's one point. But now another point that we have to look at is that we are not interested here in maximizing the catch. This is one community. They all live together. We want to maximize economic welfare of the entire society, not only to maximize the productivity of people on the boat. We want to maximize the total productivity of people on the boat plus people on the shore. That's the catch here. Now you see what happens when you add, what happens to the total social product, to the productivity in catching fish of the entire society as you start adding workers to the boat. 0 workers on the boat, everybody produces, everybody catches cod on the shoreline. The first worker goes to the boat, so 8 units less produced on the shore. Instead of 8,000, now you have 7,992. Okay? The guy who is now on the boat cannot catch fish on the shore. But 12 additional units produced on the boat. So now the total social catch, the total social productivity is 8,004. 12 minus 8. What happens then? The second worker, total product is 30. Total addition. Subtraction is 16. 2 people who could have caught 8 units apiece on the shore, now catching in total 3. So 14 is the difference. 3 minus 16. Okay? 8,000. 2 people cannot work anymore on the shore. That's 16 units lost. 3 units gained by them working on the boat. So this is total product on the boat. This is marginal product on the boat. This is shore plus boat. And so on down the line. When you divert 3 people from working on the shore to the boat, you lose 3 times 8, 24 units, which reduces your total product to 7,974, but increases it by 46. Yeah, 3 people produce 46 overall. So you see that this operation makes sense from a standpoint of the society as a whole. The final result is that the total social catch increased. Can you tell me, by looking at the numbers here from a standpoint of the society as a whole, which would be the optimal combination
2.
for this society?
Never mind. 5.
What is the best? Yeah. Yeah. Why 5?
Because you still produce 8,026,
Yeah.
and you're not at a loss, I guess. I don't know.
That's the highest number. Total social product. It's greatest, 8,026. It's also here, 8,026. One of these 2. Has to be one of these 2. And let's say, for now, that it's 8,026. So essentially, from a societal point of view, the best possible combination of resources, the best possible distribution of workers between working on the shore and working on the boat would be if 5 people were manning the boat and 7,000 995 remain on the shore. That way, the total catch, the total quantity of fish produced would be greatest. Okay. Now, let's explore two different arrangements pertaining to the structure of this team that operates on the boat. Imagine that, number one, we want such an organization of people on the boat that will maximize the salaries or gains of the people who work as sailors, as fishermen on the boat. So that would be an equivalent of a socialist self-governing firm. The workers are the owners of the firm. So we want to maximize the wages of workers. What would be, among all of these combinations, what would be the optimal one, if that's our goal, to maximize the gains for workers?
It would be 4 people on the boat, because you would have one less than the 5, but you're still making the same amount of product. So instead of paying that 5th person, you
Why
get
would that be?
that wage among all the other people. Because you don't gain anything by adding a 5th person, but you're still paying the 5th person.
Yeah, but
for
we
a whole day.
don't assume that anybody is a private owner. We assume now that the workers are private owners. That the workers can retain whatever they catch.
It would be 3 because their average product per person sized.
Yeah, exactly. So why 3? The average product is 15.3. So everybody gets equal shares. The shares are the greatest, number 3. See, average product is total product divided by the number of people who work.
So we're not talking about the people on the shore, though, just the people on the boat.
Just the people on the boat, just about the firm, the structure of the firm. So, sorry if this was unclear. I'm talking now about how to organize the boat, how to organize the team that works on the shore, that works on the boat. So yes, if our goal is to maximize the gains of people who work on the boat, that would be just 3 of them working, because their individual shares will be greatest, 15.3. Now, what is the consequence of that? The consequence of that is that you have 4 units less than social optimum. Society as a whole would be losing 4 units of fish in order to serve the interests of people who work on the boat.
Why does it, it's like, why does it really matter what the individuals have? Why does it matter that they get the greatest share that we have?
Why does it matter? No, we are just speculating. This is just a different way of saying, if we assume that our goal is to have equal number of shares, to have equally shared gains from production among the people who produce. If that's our goal, if we want our teams, productive teams, our firms to be organized in such a way as to have workers in charge and workers getting all the gains from whatever they do, the final result will be the suboptimal level of production for society as a whole. Because they will be dividing up among themselves all the gains that they achieve, and the total quantity of production will be less than an optimum. We'll go back to this once we explore a different scenario here. Imagine now that we have. Go.
Just a follow-up question. So when you say that all the workers would have equal shares,
Yeah.
I mean, like if
46 times divided by 3. 46 is the total product. 3 of them work, divided by 3, 15.33.
Okay. So is it really that they'd have the greatest part of the share? Because no matter, like, it would always be equal. It's just people want to get
It doesn't have to be equal,
Oh.
but we can assume. I was advisedly assuming that it is an equal share. It doesn't have to be equal share, but that's the average. It doesn't have to be literally equal.
Okay.
But what is really important is whatever you assume about the distribution. If only they among themselves share the gains,
Okay.
and they're interested in maximizing their total gain, irrespective of the scheme of distribution among themselves. Maybe they agree that one guy gets 50% and the remaining 25. Doesn't matter. I was assuming, just for the sake of simplicity, that they share it on equal shares. If their total, if they're like utility function is to maximize their total gains, they would be doing that at the expense of society. They wouldn't be able that way to provide the maximum possible quantity of fish for society as a whole. Like a kind of selfish mechanism here. So now we know that we want to maximize the number that we want, and we know that we want to get to this magic number here, 86. Imagine now that you have a private firm, that I'm the owner of the boat, and I decide how many people to hire. So now it's a private firm. It's not a worker controlled and worker owned firm. It's a classical standard private firm. It doesn't matter what is there. Let's say like a private proprietorship. So now what I do, I want to maximize my profit. What is my profit? That's the difference between my total product and the total cost in wages that I have to pay. So now I say to workers, if you're gonna work for me, I'm gonna pay you certain quantity of fish, because we don't have money. I pay wages in fish, because that's the only good that we have. So now what is the production structure or the production function is the same. Still, productivity is the same. Here, the same table. So now I'm thinking about employing one person. Okay, my gain will be 12 units. Okay, what is the wage that I will be forced to pay here? What do I think? This is the second point. Wages, opportunity, cost, supply, and demand of labor. What is the wage? How many fish? How many pounds of fish I would need to pay in order to get a worker, to convince the worker to work for me? All other things being equal, let's say.
You have to pay him more than what you can catch on shore.
Yeah, or at least equal.
At least 8 or 9.
At least 8. So see, that's the opportunity cost of labor that needs to work for me, is the next best opportunity that they have. And the next best opportunity for themselves is to work by themselves and catch 8. Now, since they have a secure income from me, I promise to pay them 8. So that's better off than 8, which is uncertain in their own case. Okay, so let's now go through all of these possibilities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see where so how many people, can you tell me up front, how many people am I going to employ? What will determine that? When will I stop increasing the labor force on the board?
When you have more than 8.
So
basically you have to pay all the employees 8 pounds.
8, yeah.
So
How many?
That means that there's 4 left over. So when you need to have more than 3, so that you make a profit, you get more than 8 yourself.
What will be my profit when I employ the first one? 4. Okay. 12 minus 8. What about 2? What is my gain? 3. What is my cost? 16. So my gain is 14. Oh, that's better. So what I do? Keep increasing, because my profit is increasing. I increase production. Remember, price taker firm. Every firm does that. So third unit, I gain 46. What is the cost? 24. What is the net gain? 22. Still increasing. Very well. Greedy, exploitative bastard wants to earn money on the backs of poor working people. I keep employing more and more and exploiting more and more of that. Fourth, 58. Total gain. That's mine. I'm the owner of the boat. The total product belongs to me. What is the wage? For me? 4 people, 32, 26. Even better. 5, 66 minus what is the 5 times 8, 40, 26 again. Okay, still good. What if I decide to employ the 7th one? So it's 70 total gain. What is the cost? 7 times 8, 56. No, what is the? No, 6. I'm sorry. First one was 12, second one 30, third one 46, fourth one 58, fifth one 66, sixth one 70. 70, and the cost is 48. So 22, less than 26. So I'm not going to employ the 6th person because my profit will be less. 22 is less than 26. Okay? So you see this mismatch. This is another reason, another way to understand why every single individual firm will have a definite size, because the labor costs are by and large constant. They are determined by the supply and demand of labor, by the opportunity cost of labor. They change very slowly. Price of labor is by and large fixed, whereas marginal productivity decreases. So then my volume of production will be determined by the profit maximizing point, and that will be, in this particular case, 5 workers. Okay? You with me about this? Take a look over here. Average, it's not very good for workers. Their production on average is lower than in the case of the self-governing socialist firm. But the total social production is maximized. Total social production is maximized because quantity produced on the shore plus quantity produced on the boat, when added up, give you the biggest number. That's the goal. So what is the conclusion from this? The conclusion from this is that the private greedy exploitative firm actually produces the greatest value for society. By using the profit-seeking motive of the boat owner, it produces the greatest economic wealth for the society as a whole. Now, this shouldn't be confused with a normative judgment that the private ownership is good and communal or collective ownership is bad. Why? What do you think? So this is clear that the total social income, we can say, is greatest when you have a private firm as an ownership. So we can now extrapolate this conclusion and say if this applies in general, we can say that a society which is predominantly based on private ownership, on this model that we just described, greedy exploitative bastard taking as much as he can himself, will create the greatest total income in society. That this society in general, on aggregate, will be wealthier than all other alternatives. Why does that mean? Does that, in your view, mean that this is a good society that we need to strive for? Are there any other problems that may be ethical problems in this system? Imagine that I'm the owner of the boat, you're my crew, and we have a total income of $1 million. And let's say that I get 99% of it and you get 1%.
You could just quit.
No, and imagine an alternative in which we all work together and our total product is $100,000 and everybody gets equal share. Which one of these two is better? From a societal point of view, as maximization of total societal wealth, the first one is better, obviously, because $1 million is better than $100,000. But intuitively, something is fishy here because in one case, I keep all the money and you get just the scraps, or $100. In the other example, all of us get some reasonable amount of income. So theoretically, this is possible. Theoretically, situations like that are possible. This unequal distribution of wealth may overwhelm the total productivity of the economy. That people in a wealthy society theoretically could be, the distribution of income could be such as to make poorer strata of society worse off than in an alternative system in which private property is not the basis for social organization. That's one pair of shoes, as they say. However, there is a however here. That's not very likely to happen in reality. When you look empirically. Oh, we have 5 minutes. Wages of poor workers tend to be much higher in societies that are based on capitalist private firms than in societies which are based on socialism. American poor workers earn much more than the best paid workers in Cuba and Venezuela and North Korea. That are explicitly based on this redistributive, egalitarian, collectivistic approach. That we don't want our people profiting on the backs of poor workers. How to explain this? What is the reason? Why the wages in capitalist countries that are based on this? So my goal is to pay as little as I can. And still somehow I am forced to pay you more than you could earn in any alternative system in which you are not exploited by greedy entrepreneurial bastards. What does explain this? Counterintuitive reality.
Since the total output is greater, they're going to pay you like what you're worth or like what you're putting into it, I guess.
So why the wages are going to increase gradually? So here wages are static. But wages increase in capitalist society. So one example, one economist uses the example of a butler or a waiter. A person that does essentially the same job that they did 200 years ago. And modern butler and modern waiter earns 100 times, 1,000 times more than his equivalent 200 years ago. Why is that the case? What do you think? Very nice opportunity to cement your participation grades. If you can nail down this one. If you can nail down this one, you understood everything. I don't worry about today's life. Why? Why? Well, let me ask you this. Why a waitress in Bismarck, North Dakota, earns 5 times more than a waitress in Belgrade, Serbia? They do the same job, serving coffee or soup or whatever. Why is that the case? It's the exact same job.
Over like the years, the total productivity is more than it would be under socialists. So
Why is that? Capitalists are equally greedy and evil here and in Serbia. How come that greedy capitalists pay 10 times more for the same job here? What are other opportunities that a waitress in Bismarck, North Dakota has, and the waitress in Serbia doesn't have? Opportunity cost of labor. Wages are higher in other areas. So then the opportunity cost, if you don't pay me more, this job, I'm going to work elsewhere. So in the 18th century, a butler, the only alternative that the butler had is to work in a very primitive farming or whatever, at very low wages. Now, a butler can go and work as a waiter, work as in retail or whatever, the better pay.
Is it because, I mean, like an employee is going to, if you're working as a butler and you're getting paid next to nothing, it's like you're not going to work there, you're going to go work.
You're going to go work elsewhere. And now your opportunities in 2020 are much greater than they were 200 years ago. And your opportunities in North Dakota are much better better because the structure of wages, the wage rates in other industries are much higher than in Belgium. So it's not that a waitress in Bismarck is 10 times more productive than a waitress in Belgrade. It's just that the opportunity cost of her labor is much higher because in other areas she can earn much more. But why is that the case? Why wages increase in the meantime? Why the opportunity cost of a butler is so much higher than 200 years ago? And why a capitalist firm is more likely in the long run to increase wages than this self-governed firm?
That's make the position more desirable. Like the higher the wage, the more like that they will.
Imagine, just one final subtle point. Imagine that we have $1 million of surplus we created as a team. If I'm the private owner, what is likely to happen? How I'm going to use this profit? To invest in new production, to buy newer and better machines to increase productivity. When you have workers that work with a better and more productive machinery, they can produce more. They can produce more, their wages are going to increase because wages correspond to marginal productivity. How much you can increase the product. If you employ me as a farm worker, I can produce much more if I work with combine harvester than if I try to work with manual tools. But in order for you to invest in combine harvesters and new modern equipment, you need accumulation of capital money. If you have a self-governing firm, it is far more likely that people will divide up the proceeds for wages right now and invest less. So you need investment and technological change in order to increase productivity of labor, in order to have higher wages. But in order to have a higher rate of investment, you need a private structure or private firm that somebody is motivated to invest, let's say, instead of dividing money for wages right now. Okay? Good. Yeah, see ya.